Jonathan, back again. Thank you for carving out time to record some back-to-back episodes.
Of course. Happy to.
All right, for those of you who didn't catch last week's episode, Jonathan Klunk, CEO of Key Source Properties, big in the Louisville short-term rental space. Jonathan is also founding partner at 6 Degrees Real Estate. We kind of focused on the short-term rental side of the fence last week. Let's do a little bit of a change up here. We're going to focus on the, not second hat you wear, but the other one of the other big hats you wear, kind of 6 Degrees Real Estate side. Talk through Louisville. So talk to me about just what you're seeing in the Louisville market as we sit today. What are some of the headwinds, tailwinds? We have a rising interest rate environment.
Mhm.
How are home prices holding up there? Just give me a bird's eye view of Derby City.
Sure. Louisville is a very unique market, and historically, I think almost has always been in comparison to other cities our size.
Mhm.
We see steady growth. We don't have huge spikes going in either direction. And, we like to refer to ourselves or look at ourselves as inside of a bubble. We're protected from a lot of the massive inflation in prices that you'll see in markets like Austin, Texas, Miami, Nashville. I mean, to the south of us is the biggest example. I mean, we blinked and they just took off and, left us in their dust kind of with the growth that the city's experiencing. But I think, from a real estate standpoint, that's not really an environment that we want to be in. I mean, it looks great when you're selling and leaving Nashville, but don't forget that you still have to buy in that market too if you're staying there. So Louisville is a very steady, very protected market, just something that our economy has done over the years. So it's great for homegrown investors and investors who have been priced out of their own markets. I work with a lot of Nashville investors who just can't afford to buy there anymore, especially for their buy and hold strategies. We're also seeing a strong growth in year over year rents that are charged. So, that happened during the pandemic, pretty good growth, especially like for two-bedroom apartments. So that will need to plateau. Also, in our sales side, we're starting to see a little bit more inventory sit. I actually just checked yesterday, and single-family residences in Jefferson County, which is all of Louisville, were 865. So that's down. Whenever I checked about 6 months ago, it was about 600. So our inventory is slowly starting to rise because I think there are some buyers who don't have to buy right now who are just waiting to see what's going to happen with the interest rates. And there's also more people coming to market and listing because they might be afraid that they're going to miss their window to actually list and get a sale if those interest rates do continue to rise and more people leave the market. But when we're looking at our sweet spot of about 350,000 to 500,000, we're seeing a lot of intense competition. These are the ones where you have your cash buyers waiving all of the contingencies, 15-day close that anybody who's financing just almost can't compete with. That's slowing
Mhm.
down a little bit. Instead of getting 12 offers, maybe they're getting 6 or 5. But it's certainly still there for sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely interesting times right now, and this is a good example of like it's so market specific.
Hmm.
I just poking around, looking at what's in Greenville, South Carolina, which is rapidly growing. There are a lot of I've been here 11 years. Came up here for college. I grew up on the coast of South Carolina, and very different. Growing up in a tourism focused town, right? Like a beach town, Myrtle Beach
Hmm.
area. I grew up in Myrtle's Inlet, just south of there. But tourism is the lifeblood of that. And then even the opposite side of the state, up in the mountains, you have just a more stable environment. You have, uh, I guess, like not to throw a knock or anything, but you have more culture, more community because it's a less transient city, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot of that kind of resonates with me. And on the pricing side of the fence, yeah, you can like I can sell today and spectacularly happy versus when I bought 6 years ago. But then yeah, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy into just a nasty, nasty market that is very different than what it was even 2 years ago. And even if you look back, I was looking at a couple of places beginning of April, end of March this year. So a few months ago, drastically different environment, right? But interest rates are up over 200 basis points in those few months. Home prices have continued to go up, although, at least in our market, just scrolling through Zillow very qualitatively, like you see price cuts, whereas 2 months ago you didn't see price cuts. You saw recent increases across the board, like starting to see some price cuts. So it seems like there may be some price discovery that's now saying, over the last few months, that's now saying, like we've tipped the ceiling, and there's more hesitancy. The supply piece in the
Sure.
market like helps bolster prices from a truly foundational standpoint, but nonetheless, like this is uncertainty. Yeah.
Well, from a price cut perspective, you'll generally see price cuts for two reasons. Either one, yes, the property is sitting on the market because there's more competition, there's more inventory, or number two, that they just priced way too high. A lot of people
Hmm.
do come out of the gate and want to test the market. I have a lot of conversations with buyers where they want to list higher than I do. Sometimes I want to list higher than they do. So we kind of have these conversations because we don't want to let our clients down, and they price where we want, and then we get an offer right out of the gate, full ask, and then they wanted to go higher. So then there's that doubt in your mind: should we have gone higher and try to get more money? So a lot of people don't see harm in testing the water, and I still don't either. I think that whenever people see a price drop, they instantly think, ooh, what's wrong with the house? Why does nobody want it since it's sitting?
Hmm.
um, or something like that. But I think that it's possible that you just ask too much. You look at the property, you think it has one value based on the comps, and then you just overshoot it. So you can always reduce your price, but it's very difficult to try and increase it after you've listed it. But another strategy that people are really implementing in order to get multiple offers, and above asking offers, is that they're listing 1 to 2% below where they should be. Like, there are houses in our market selling for like 450, 475, but the list price was 389, 398. And just being under that 400, it gives people so much hope that they're like, might as well just throw an offer in there, because I think that the price
Yeah.
is definitely, or the house is definitely valued more than that. So there's two different strategies: start high, and you might sit for a little while and have to reduce, or come in low and try and get multiple offers on your property.
Yeah, that's the first place my mind goes to. Isn't that there's some material defect? But yeah, like you just price a
You'd be
little
surprised
aggressively
how
for
many
that
people
market
ask
at that
that.
time.
Yeah, so many people say, hey, why do you think this has been sitting? Well, it's priced too high. Well, do you think they'll come down? I don't know. Let's place an offer. I mean, you never know where somebody is. They could say no, 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 no for months, and then all of a sudden they could decline your offers, and then somebody else come in. It's active under contract. You wait, see what it closes for, and it's less than what you were going to offer them, because the market, can be crazy if you don't play your strategies right.
Every part of it's dynamic. I think it can be oversimplified sometimes. Like this is what it's listed for. This is what I'm going to do. This is the game plan. But every part of this market is dynamic, and you throw in some people who have to come to agreements and make decisions, and then that gets all the more complex. But yeah, I never
Well, you have
like.
so many different moving parts, and this is where it gets very interesting. I have two quotes. One is, real estate waits for no one, because if a property has been on the market for a year, you know it's going to get an offer the day that you want to go and see it. Number two is that everything is different every single time. Every property, every buyer and seller, every agent. You put two agents together who don't get along, they might make this transaction miserable or be the reason that certain things happen. If you have a novice seller and an expert buyer, then they're not going to see head to head on some things. If they overprice it and they don't want to lower the price, every situation is unique and different, and you really have to have patience and be able to step back and calmly assess what's going on and make good decisions.
Yeah, just keep your rational head about you. It's a good general life tip for sure. I
Yes,
like it.
it goes across
Yeah,
boundaries.
this is true. This is true. What else? So is your focus? Oh, let me ask this. So how close in proximity, and forgive me, I know I'm not terribly well informed on all things Kentucky Derby. It's on the checklist.
Oh,
I'll
you're
get
not?
there
I'm
sometime.
shocked.
No, I know. I'm terribly ashamed, Jonathan.
That's okay. We're
Um,
here to educate as ambassadors for
that's
this great city.
that is it. So what in terms of, let's stick on the short-term rental piece, right? The windfall from everything Derby, what
Mhm.
does that look like? Like what's the time
Mhm.
frame that I bet the farm that everything's going to be 100% booked. What's
Mhm.
the proximity that like is it within a mile, 2 miles, 10 miles that
It has
this holds
nothing to
true?
do
Like
with
what's it
that.
look like?
It has nothing
No?
to do with that. And believe me, actually, the properties right around Churchill Downs, it's not where most of our guests want to stay. We've had a few properties there in the
Right.
past, and believe it or not, they don't necessarily feel safe. And
Got
that's
it.
because directly around the track, it's a little rough. You're not going to see it on TV. You're going to definitely have to visit and drive around to get that feeling. But
Mhm.
where Churchill Downs started and grew, and what was actually around it, there's a lot of people who've worked at the track over the past hundred and how many years of its existence. I think the race itself, over 140 years old. So it's organically evolved that way. I live in Old Louisville, so I'm about one little over 1 mile from the track. So some of those horse races are further of a distance than where I live from the track. And it's in an old part of town with Victorian houses. My house was built in 1889, and we're right between downtown and Churchill Downs. And Churchill Downs is close to like University of Louisville. But we'll open our calendars on short-term rental sites about 6 to 12 months in advance. Believe it or not, most of the booking activity will happen about 3 to 4 months out. But even if we get a last minute cancellation, you'll get somebody who comes right back in behind it. You might lose some money, because just like the real estate market, you start with your higher price, and the closer you get
Mhm.
to Derby, you kind of reduce your price. So if somebody wants to
Yeah.
come in and wait for the best value, wait until the end. But what you're going to have to pick from is not going to be maybe exactly what you want unless new properties are coming on. And new properties are always coming on because this is the time of the year where people who just rent out their primary residences,
Mhm.
they're going to get on Airbnb and do that for a few days, whereas they don't do it all throughout the year. They're not permanent operators. So we have a lot more inventory that comes to market during Derby as well. And sometimes, some years, we'll have a property that will rent for $5,000 for 3 nights, and then the next year it'll be $15,000. I've had celebrities stay in some of our properties that they can get $30,000 to $40,000 for 3 nights. If it's a multi-million-dollar property with a pool, even though the pool isn't open in May that early. Um,
Mhm.
it's really all over the place. But this is where people can sometimes make or break their years because one Derby weekend is the equivalent of between 1 and 3 months of what you would normally make doing short-term rentals, depending on how well your properties do.
Makes complete sense. Kind of taking it back to growing up at the beach, like restaurants, uh, rentals on the beach. It's very very seasonal. There's a window that you make your money there, and then after that is very slim picking. So
Mhm.
the difference there in terms of a different market and differences in stability. But yeah, that is interesting. 1 to 3
And
months.
Louisville, we do have the Derby. We do have the Bourbon Trail. I mean, that's something that we are gaining a lot of tourists for. But one number that really blew my mind is right before the pandemic hit, before March 15th, and we had to refund, $1 million worth of reservations. Um, we had about 22 million visitors per year to Louisville, and that was expected to exceed about 26 million within the next few years. And a lot of people don't realize that, but that is because we have major conventions that come into town, like 200, 300,000 people at a time. Then we have the Derby. We have several major music festivals. We have, Louder Than Life. We have Hometown Rising, just back to back, 3 weekends in a row in September. We used to have a big Ironman in October that brought people from around the globe. We'd have people from Amsterdam, from China staying with us. We have a lot of corporations that are headquartered here who have people who come to town. So all of those things combined, we have between 22 and 26 million visitors per year who are staying in our hotels and short-term rentals, and there's no end in sight for that. So we're also a stable but very, very transient city relying on tourism, especially kind of close to downtown where the desirable areas are.
Great point. Great point. I want to, in the last minute, tell me about your podcast, Jonathan, and a spectacular name,
Okay.
by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Selling Derby City. I mean, it sounds, like some other things that are out there, but I think that it really just fit. It has a nice ring to it. We have a TV component of that we were working on for just YouTube, self-published, self-produced. We're working with a great group here in town. So we have 3 of those episodes that we'll be releasing. Our podcast has 9 episodes right now. The entire first season is all about short-term rentals, from zoning to technology to how to design them. We brought in interior designers to talk with us about that. We brought in technologists to talk about their piece. So I kind of got to be the guy who asked all the questions, the things that I wanted to know how other people operated. And I learned things as well. So I don't even know everything. I have a long way to go to get to that point, but we do know a lot. So we shared all of our trials, tribulations, experiences, and best practices. So you don't have to be in the Louisville market to benefit from it. Definitely listen to it. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Selling Derby City.
I love it. You in this episode and the last episode, you did a spectacular job of very clearly laying out what can be some abstract concepts a lot of times. So I have learned from you in this episode and the last, and for anyone who has any interest in short term rentals, absolutely go check out Jonathan's podcast. You will learn a boatload. Jonathan, again, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll have to check in with you soon.
Thank you. And also, another short-term rental resource for you is follow me on Instagram at Top Louisville Agent, with periods in between each of those. At Top Louisville Agent, we share a lot of information about short-term rentals, links to everything that we have going on. So another great resource for everybody. And I like to entertain as well. So hopefully you'll come for the information and stay for the song and dance.
15.3 thousand followers, Jonathan. You are getting after it, my friend. I love it. I love it. I just followed you, so you have one more follower. I thank
Thank
you
you.
again. I can't thank you enough. Thanks everybody for listening. Take care.